Good morning, everybody. We are back for our next look at the Limitless series. The last episode, we were looking at our focus, our awareness, how to harness it, and how to use it for studying or acting, motivation. But today we're looking at studying. As it is with our past chapters, we're going to start the studying by asking ourselves the three questions that start at the beginning. If I'm going to be a lifelong student, how do I optimize my study time? Is cramming the best way to learn something? And lastly, how do I become a better note taker? The author then goes to provide us a story about how he was called up last minute to read a book in a couple of hours and then to perform a keynote speech on the book. The author, of course, does so successfully and does so well, and we're all very impressed. And then he says, I knew I could do this because with competence comes confidence. And I really like that because it's true. And, when you're really good at something, it's easy for you to undertake something that other people would view as an insurmountable challenge, and you can just knock it out of the park because it's something you're good at and you know you can do it. And I know I'm hoping that I can achieve a level of comfort at learning so that I can learn something, a lot of material quickly and thoroughly so that I can be a subject matter expert on it much faster than before. So this studying section is a pretty big part of what we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives. So I'm probably going to review this chapter 2 or 3 more times in different intervals as we continue. The author continues, after providing us the story, that there are 4 levels of competence. You have unconscious incompetence, or pretty much you don't know what you don't know. Then you have conscious incompetence, which is where you're aware of a skill, but you are unable to perform it. And then you have conscious competence, where you're aware of the skill and you can do it as long as you are actively putting in the effort and the mind power to do the task. And then lastly, there's the 4th level of competence, which is unconscious competence, where the task, you've done it so often that it's second nature and you can do it without thinking about it. The author goes to add that they would like to add a 5th level of competence, that being true mastery, which is what we're aiming for here in the Limitless book. Now, true mastery, the author describes as the ability to perform the task unconsciously in second nature, but at an elite performance level every time. So those are the competencies, and so now we're going to work on how do we get to those competencies. Well, by the title of the chapter, we're going to study. And so the question is, how do we study better? The author provides us a couple of different tools to use to help assist us with our studying. The first one is active recall. I had to do a little bit of Googling on active recall because it's described in here, but it's not exactly, it's not really, said, broken down for dummies like me to really understand what it is. It says review the material, close the book, turn off the video, remove the material, and then either recite or write what it is that you remember. Like, yeah, okay, that's what you do, but what do you do if you don't remember everything? Do you only read the parts you didn't remember and then try to actively remember it the second time? Do you do that until you remember everything and then try to do it all at once? So I'm still looking at the proper employment of active recall. I'm pretty sure from what I've read, from what I've watched, it's that you take your chunk of knowledge, you try to actively recall it. Whatever you don't recall, you skip, and then you focus on what you didn't recall, try to actively recall that until you're able to recall everything, and then you do it one more time to ensure that you have everything in there. Now, a big part of the active recall is a second tool that's provided the spaced repetition. So the idea behind this, I also had to look this up, is that the idea is that you don't do rote memory where you just read it over and over every single time, just repeat it in blocks. You do the active recall and then put it down, walk away, and then keep on going. And then at a later date, you'll do the active recall again. So maybe do the active recall immediately after your lesson, and then do active recall before you go to bed. Whatever you don't remember, special emphasis on that, and then you're done. And then active recall again, and they space it between one day. Actively recall from Monday, try it again on Tuesday. If you've got everything, all your ducks are in a row, then that's it for the day. Then you can push that recall off until 2 or 3 days later. And if you still have everything in there good to go, you can just keep pushing that bit of information further and further into your rotation of recalling your knowledge and your memories. And in between that, you add more information, actively recall that, and you have one large constant study. From how I understand it, from how I am interpreting it. The next habit that's provided is the manager state. This is another reoccurring character. State is very important. You have to have the right mindset, the energy, the motivation, the willpower, the capacity. You have to be in the right state to really get your study on, to get your learning on, to get the progress and the results that you're looking for. And it is something that I believe we have a large control over, so that we can control the state that we're in. The author goes to help us and say, to lean in, or rather to transition, talking about state. There are certain ways that you can influence your state. One of those being the sense of smell. The author recommends that you use rosemary, peppermint, and lemon, I believe. Yes, because it promotes concentration. So what I've done is I got a little essential oil thing right there, and currently we have peppermint in there at the moment. Now, when you do this, your mind will associate the scent of smell, or will associate that smell with the knowledge that you're learning, and it combines them together. They associate in your mind, and it's much easier to retain and recall information when there's an association between the information and something else. So the thought here is you study with peppermint or rosemary in the background, and then when you go to recall the information at a speech or a pitch, that you put something on your wrist or maybe a cologne, just enough to remind you of the scent so that it helps you recall information at a later date. Another tool for helping us study is music. Now, I'm listening, they recommend Baroque music. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it is music with between 50 and 80 beats per minute. The author writes here, Baroque music seems to have some particular valuable qualities. Music stabilizes mental, physical, and emotional rhythms to attain a deep state of concentration and focus in which large amounts of content information can be processed and learned. So they recommend Baroque music composed by Bach, Handel, or Telemann, that is 50 to 80 beats per minute. I started doing this morning, and I think it is certainly helping. It really helps tune everything else out, but it makes the concentration that's being performed on these screens not as violent. It's not such a bright, piercing thing. It's very smooth and calm and relaxing, looking at all this, black text on white screen, which I can probably do something about. But it took the strain from me as I was reading the information and trying to retain it. And this rolls into another habit to help you study, being to listen with your whole brain, as the author writes here. The author poses that a lot of the information that we intake can be done by written text, but a lot of people learn best orally or audibly. What's he say here? Very strong connection. It's in here somewhere. But a lot of people learn by listening to others talk to them. And that practice, the human brain is able to comprehend 400 words per minute, but the average speaker only uses about 100 words per minute. So that leaves our brain, 75% of it, doing nothing. It's off thinking about other things, thinking about the laundry that I have to go and switch loads in, about the lights and how bright they are, the timing that I have 22 minutes until 26 minutes until I have to do my next task. The not paying full attention to your speaker allows your mind to wander, and so you don't listen to everything that the speaker says, and so you don't remember everything that was spoken. The author suggests that we pay 100% attention to the speaker. We watch their facial expressions, listen for their intonation, their tone, watch their eyes, listen to their words, of course, and employ previous tools to help us pay attention. What are we listening for? What are we hoping to retain from this? How are we going to use this? When are we going to use this? Why are we going to use this? And I'll use those questions to prime you to really, really listen to the author or to the speaker so that you can hold as much information as you need. There are some tips for helping you listen to your speakers. As we know and love here in the Limitless community, we have plenty of acronyms. So to help you listen to your speaker, here is the 4-letter acronym HERE. The first H in HERE is to halt. HALT is to control your awareness, bring everything into focus, and stop paying attention to everything else out here, and only pay attention to what's here in front of you. The E in HERE is empathy. If you empathize with your speaker, try to understand where they're coming from, and most importantly, why they're trying to get this information across to you. It'll help you develop a relationship and a connection to the material that you're listening to, making it easier to listen to, recall, understand, and digest. The A in HERE is to anticipate. If you're able to, the author asks that you participate in the discussion with anticipation and enthusiasm. You ask the speaker to clarify or to reiterate something so that you have more engagement and you're involved in the process. It helps invoke emotion, which also attaches to your knowledge and makes it easier for you to recall it at a later date. Speaking of recalling at a later date, another reoccurring character is review. So the author wants you to, if you can engage with the speaker, ask them to clarify or to reiterate something. If you're not able to, then to take notes and to summarize or paraphrase whatever the speaker is talking to you about. And on that note, let's take note of taking notes. Taking notes is a really, really big part of learning, studying, memory, and everything. So there's bound to be a better way to do it. A lot of us do. The author says, first off, be sure. Okay, that's right. So the following are tips to help us take better notes. And this is where I pulled it from earlier, that before you start taking notes, you want to understand the purpose of the notes that you're taking. What's the goal that you're trying to achieve from listening to the speaker? And when you're taking notes, I think this is also a really big one too. It's really helped me a lot, is to use your own words when you're taking notes. Early on in my note taking of the Limitless thing, I have verbatim, word for word notes on what some of the acronyms meant, on what the lesson was teaching us, and I did not retain that information well. It wasn't until I scribbled it out and then rewrote it in my own terminology that I was able to understand and hold on to the information. So, again, we know them, we love them. We have another acronym to help us take better notes. And the acronym is TIP. So the T for TIP is to think. Before the session begins, you want to think about what your goal is listening to the speaker, what you're trying to pull from them, what are you trying to get out of this. The I for tip is to identify. When you're listening to the speaker, You want to listen for pieces of knowledge. You want to identify them as long as they are in line with your goal of what you were trying to take from the speech. So if you know what you're looking for, you look for those with identify, and then P, once you look at your notes and all the key notes that you've taken, you're going to prioritize all the different things you wrote down. What was the most important keynote that you wrote down, and then work your way down from that to build your overall picture of what you took away from the sermon or from the speaker. And before we move on, we are given a couple of exercises to do. Introduce yourself to new material, and then try to do active recall. I did that for the lesson that we read of study, and it was okay. I forgot a few levels of competency. I forgot about the acronym of TIP, but after going over it 2 more times, I was able to remember it. And the next exercise is to play music that works for you. I just found a YouTube Baroque playlist and have that playing. It's about 3.5 hours long, so it's long enough for my Limitless session. Again, I've only been doing it for 1 day, but it feels like it works out. And then to try the new note-taking tools. I do that every chapter that I read in this book, so I refrained from watching a TED Talk and taking notes on that, as I felt I did justice with the notes I took for the Limitless book. We have our next quote. If we all did the things we are capable of doing, we would literally astound ourselves. Thomas Edison. Truth to that. So now that we have our knowledge on focus and paying proper attention, we have knowledge on how to study and how to take good notes, how to listen, we move on to memory. What is memory? Memory is our ability to withhold information, and those two things are going to help us increase our memory with pertinent information as we move forward on our limitless journey. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being here. I think I'm going to end it there, and then I'll get the next video on memory coming out soon. Y'all be safe, stay smart, be limitless.